So they go in the mouse, right? They go to a mouse and they find that little sequence, which is the same sequence in human beings. And they manipulate it and engineer it in mice. And what do they get? A genetically engineered super mouse that stuns scientists. This modded mouse can run non-stop for 5 hours. He lives longer, has more sex, doesn't get fat. He is also very aggressive. He stuns scientists with its physical abilities. It can run 6 kilometers at a speed of 20 meters per minute, which is the equivalent of a man cycling at speed all the way up an alpine mountain without a break. What? This is a joke, right? No, it's not a joke. It's the truth. I mean, they've done it in the mouse. Do you think they'll now take it over to the humans? Sure. That's why they're doing it. So you're now on the edge of being able to manufacture and manipulate and change everything. Let me tell you something. I grew up in Nebraska. And my mother told me how it worked. She said, you know, God gave you what you got, huh? And you just got to learn to live with it. So if you're short and you don't have any hair, whatever your problem turns out to be, that's just too bad. You got to deal with it. Not anymore. Not anymore. We're literally sitting at the first time in human history where we're playing God, where we're manipulating and engineering life. We're doing it in plants and animals and now human beings. I mean, it's extraordinary. We're all going to look back and say, man, we were there in that 10, 15-year period when it all started to change, and you ran yourself up this exponential curve. Same kind of things are happening in energy. I mean, we might have peaking of oil, but that's not the end of the story. You've got researchers are figuring out how to do enzymatic production of hydrogen from biomass. I mean, that's trash. That's trash. You know what the biggest export by volume of the United States is? It's just cardboard, corrugated cartons. You know what that's made of? That's made out of biomass, and you can, which is cellulosic biomass. In that particular case, it comes from trees. And if you can get enzymes, which are bugs, right? Bio bugs to eat it all up and produce hydrogen out of the thing. Suddenly, you've got waste streams all over. You've got sawdust, whatever, trash. You got all kinds of things that you can turn into usable fuel. You've got bacteria that could build, you know, that you could get cellulosic ethanol. You can get alcohol that you can use and burn in any car that we have out here. So the possibility is that you could swap out. I mean, there's a lot of issues and problems associated with this, but the end of the world isn't the end of gasoline. You build underwater windmills that will manufacture electricity. This is amazing. This is the thing you put underneath where the tides come in and out, right? And you produce electricity, and that doesn't cost you a zip. I mean, and it just turns every time the moon goes around. The moon does it. Every time the moon goes around, you make electricity. And let me tell you that those are big things, and they make a lot of electricity. These are the kind of things where one of those can power 1,000 houses and so on. And so they're laying them out on the ocean floor. I mean, there's a whole series of those kinds of things. And if you really want to push the edge of it, what you're pushing, what you're working toward is a potential breakthrough in energy. It's like the equivalent of the discovery of fire. Cold fusion, remember cold fusion, how bad that was all thought? This is the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers that says the U.S. Department of Energy gives a new hearing to cold fusion, and 2 years ago they looked at it and they decided, hey, there's enough stuff there that we ought to continue research in it because it looks like there might be a breakthrough that you could have. You get a breakthrough in that, and it's the equivalent of the discovery of fire. I mean, it's a whole different kind of ballgame. You don't have to worry about where the oil comes from or the coal or anything else. This is like reaching out into the larger system, because in the larger system there's this stuff called zero-point energy. What physicists, quantum physicist Harold Puthoff, who was our speaker before, is the world's expert in zero-point energy. He knows more about this than anyone. He's been nominated for a Nobel Prize because of his work in this area. Puthoff says that in his laboratory he has produced this zero-point energy. Zero-point energy is the energy that exists everywhere. It's the energy that underlies everything that we're all kind of made of. And there's a lot of it, by the way. There's in a cubic centimeter in a sugar cube in front of your face, there's more energy than all the known matter in the universe. Think about that for a minute. So we're sitting here swimming around in a tank full of gasoline or something, right? And we got fuel everywhere, right? And if you could just figure out how to convert that into heat or into electricity, everything changes. Big, big, big time. They've done it in a laboratory. They haven't figured out how to scale it in engineering terms. When they start to make it bigger, it melts the equipment, and they can't figure out how to do it. Listen, if it happens, exponential curve, what kind of breakthroughs do you need in order to get 80 times the last century in the next decade? That's the kind of stuff that's likely to happen. I mean, if you had a whole lot of money and you wanted to really bet on the future, you'd bet on some of these kinds of things because they got to happen in order for that trend to keep going. And by the way, for us to deal with the kind of problems that we've got as a species on this planet. There's companies like Storn who say that they think they've got it. Their Orbo produces free, clean, and constant energy. That's our claim. By free, we mean that the energy produced is done so without recourse to external sources. Got that? It's all internally produced. By clean, we mean that it has no emissions. By constant, we mean that unless you get mechanical failure, it operates indefinitely. It produces energy. What's it doing? It's reaching out into the larger system probably and bringing in energy from the larger system, the zero-point energy. You got this company, EcoWatts, in the UK. They called me up a while back, said they wanted to come visit me, and then they never came, so I don't know what that means. But they say that they got a hot water heater, that you've got electricity in the bottom, and they got some super sauce kind of approach down here, and it produces more heat out than in, and you've got a heat exchanger, and they've got it all modeled and dummied up on how they're going to do hot water heating units, and you throw the switch and it runs, and you never plug it in. It just happens because it's taking the energy from out of the larger system. I don't know if they're real or not, but there are enough of these things moving and all converging, different kinds, different ideas, some magnetic and so on, that suggest that sometime very soon you're going to get this big kind of transition, this big extraordinary change that is going to take us into a whole new energy regime. Extraordinary new time in all of human history. So what in the world is going on here? I mean, what is this? You've got all these titanic, amazing, exponential things all colliding together at the same time, and you have to start asking yourself some really big questions. I mean, what is this? Are we is this just kind of coincidental? Is this just kind of going on? Or we just happen to be here now? If you look back at that Ray Kurzweil chart where all of those things were laid on, all those paradigm shifts were laid on top of each other, and you look back at it, well, here's what evolutionary biologists say. They say the life on this planet showed up like this. 3.5 billion years ago, the first single cellular life. About 1 billion years ago, multiple cellular life. Vertebrates about 500 million years, and the mammals about 50 million years. What happens is when this settles down, that each succeeding era is 1/10 of the one that preceded it. So again, you get this spiraling thing, so it's getting shorter and shorter and shorter. You work your way further on, then you get 5 million years ago or so, early humans, and then Homo sapiens. And then it goes from being biological evolution to cultural evolution. And so then you move into from hunter-gatherers to have organized agriculture. You move into cities and towns and industrialization. And again, you get 5 and 5. And so how long is the next one? 50 years, right? How long's the next one? 5 years. I mean, it's like it's moving fast, right? It's accelerating. I mean, and this was 500 years ago. This was, by the way, the printing press in this particular case, which kicked off the ability of humans to transmit information in ways that ultimately fueled and made it possible in the industry, the machine age. So what is the one that's 50 years? Is it computers? What's the one that's 5 years? Is it biotech? What is it? What is it? I mean, there's your exponential curve. That's 10 years, 80 times, and all that kind of stuff. So it's coming. And this isn't just kind of strange guys like me who go talk about this. This is a study by the Revolution of Military Affairs that I got out of the Pentagon when I was living in Washington. And here they say, you know, here's the stuff, capability, time, here's an age. Each age gets shorter and shorter and bigger, and it approaches the singularity, like Ray Kurzweil said. An exponential, hyper-exponential set reaches infinity in a finite time. That's really big words for saying something really big happens really fast. That's what that means. So all of the indicators are pointing to saying that this is an amazing kind of transition that we're all going through. This is not kind of life as it usually happens. How do these things happen? Let me show you quickly how the kind of the model for paradigm shifts. You got one paradigm shift, the present paradigm shift, and what happens is you get this new emergent paradigm that starts to come in here. You know what a paradigm is? That's big 6-bit words for something that how you make sense out of a whole world, how you make sense out of reality. And so what you're talking about is, in kind of casual terms, if you move to a radically wild, different foreign country, that would be a paradigm shift. You'd have to sit there and figure out how it all works because it all works in a different way. We're talking about big paradigm shifts about how all of reality works. And so here comes the new one. And the new one inserts itself and gets bigger and bigger, right? And then as it gets bigger, then what happens is that the folks who dominate the old paradigm, they don't understand what's going on. They think it's the other guys that are just messing everything up, disrupting everything. And so the conservatives fight the liberals and the liberals fight the conservatives, and they say, you know, it's you guys, and you know. And that's what the fight that you get over things like stem cells and other kinds of stuff, among other things, is you get this fight because they have the mindset that says, hey, it's those guys. But all the time this new paradigm is driving itself in, and it gets bigger and bigger, and finally, by the way, it takes over and it becomes the new old paradigm, and then you wait for the next one. That's the way it always happens. It's kind of inevitable that that's the way it happens. Here's the understatement of the evening. This process is not smooth and without conflict. You know, everybody doesn't wake up some morning and say, hey, you know, new paradigm. No. Even if they knew what the word meant, huh? No, this is a big, ragged kind of process that goes through. So what other models are there that suggest and give you a sense of, you know, these large kind of umbrella terms? What is this and where we're going? Well, you don't have to buy into it necessarily, but there are other kinds of models, and one of them is the Mayan pyramids, the Mayan calendar. The Mayans had this extraordinary kind of understanding of the larger dynamics of the cosmos and how it all worked and what the cycles were, and they built these pyramids in 9 different levels, and each one each level symbolized something, a different period in time in all of history for humans, or this planet for that matter. And so what they were talking about is all of life on the planet. It was almost as though they were plugged into some larger understanding of how it all worked. And they thought that, you know, that each one of these levels on their pyramids represented a different era in all of the emergence of life. So they have all of these, and all of these things kind of start to run in parallel. So the first one of these big eras started 16.4 billion years ago. And each one of these eras, by the way, has 9 different days, right? 7 days and 6 nights, or whatever they are. Anyway, you can go down. So you can, and each one of them has a different kind of characteristic. So you can see the same characteristics in each era, only they're getting shorter and shorter and shorter. Follow that? So anyway, the first one is the big cellular underworld, then the mammalian underworld 820 million years ago, and then the familial underworld started at 41 years, then the tribal one is 2.2 million years ago, then regions, and then nationals, the beginning of nations, the Christian Dark Ages. Planetary underworld here with World War II and so on started January the 5th, in 1755, right?